podcast out there here in Singapore, and thank you so much for joining me on the Night Owl podcast. This, you guys, has been a labor of love. It's been a collection of all of my thoughts, some of them random, some of them a little more logical than usual, but most of the time it's me being able to just express what it is that I've been mulling over because I came across an interesting post, or I had a uplifting conversation, or maybe I was part of a Clubhouse. Yes, finally I'm on Clubhouse. I was able to join the conversation on Clubhouse to be able to talk to people and see where their heads are at. What is it that they're doing these days? What is entertainment? What is education? What are they trying to effect change in at the moment? So I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, and I really can't believe that I hadn't even considered this before now. But the point being that, we've seen all these Back to the Future movies. We've seen all these butterfly effect movies. You're not supposed to go back to the past. You're not supposed to change anything in the past, any one thing, however small, right? If you change in the past, will have major repercussions in the future. So looking back, we're not supposed to change anything, right? But why is it right now, looking forward, we don't think that that one thing that we're wanting to do would make a difference in our lives? So that one conversation, that one text message, that one call, doing something that, our hearts are kind of aching to do would make a difference in the future. But looking backwards, if I had just done this, if I had not changed that, we can't change anything, the time-space continuum, blah, blah, blah. So the smallest things will have this big, gigantic effect on things. But living in the present, looking into the future, we don't think anything that we do could possibly alter the course of our lives. I remember watching A Knight's Tale, one of my favorite movies, and I think I know it by heart by now, but the point being that he was sitting on his father's shoulders talking about, can we change our stars? And can we somehow, change the course of our lives? And eventually he ended up asking the question, how did the nobles become nobles in the first place? They took it at the tip of the sword. And I love that because he realized that he wasn't going to be handed any of these things. These opportunities weren't going to fall into his lap. He had to, even if they did open a door, if there was a crack in the door in front of him, he needed to approach the door and actually push it all the way open and then step in on top of that, right? He needed to recognize where he could just do a little bit more and get to where he needed to be. But for some reason, we're all hell-bent on doing just enough. Just enough. If you look at, how you approach work every day, and maybe you don't, maybe you do 110% every day, but most people get into this, this lull of activity, and they go to work every day, and they do the bare minimum every day, and they clock out at a certain time, just right when their shift is supposed to end, just in time. They clock out and they come back home, and then they go do it again the next day. They do mediocre every day on a mundane basis, over and over and over again, not realizing that while they're jealous of their colleagues moving up forward, past them or whatever, not realizing that they could just put a little bit more effort in, they could take a little bit more initiative, they could stay a little bit later, they could, prepare better every day, before they get into work or whatever. They could really focus the energy and make sure all of their time is productive as much as possible, and it could push them forward. Another example of that is, I remember reading somewhere, can't remember if it was James Clear, somebody, I don't know, somebody said, right, if you make a 5-year plan and implement it on a day-by-day basis based on the 5-year plan, it's going to take you 5 years to do this thing because you've planned it that way. But if you took the end goal of your 5-year plan and decided you're going to make sure that you get to it at the end of a year, it would take you a year to get there. Versus, if you decided to do something every day for an entire month, you would get to that goal based on, the timeline that you've assigned to that goal. Now, I thought it would take me years upon years upon years to get to 1,000 episodes on this podcast. Now, I could have very well done it the way everybody else is doing it, where they do it one produced podcast a week, or once every 2 weeks, or once a month, or whatever, right? And that's how they plan on putting out content on a podcast. Or I could decide to, fuck it, I'll just do it as often as possible, and I'm going to make it a habit to do one every day. And no, I was not consistent. Yes, I fell off the wagon a couple times. I missed months and months at a time. But eventually, when I decided I wanted to get to that goal, I was going to finish 1,000 episodes by the end of last year. I pushed and got it done. And at that point, I was doing 6 to 10 episodes a day, which means there is no right or wrong way to do things. If you find it in your heart that you need to sit down and record stuff, then record stuff and produce it. The least amount of work for me is the way I'm going to go, because I don't want to sit down and make sure that the audio is perfect. I don't want to make sure that I didn't yawn and I didn't have a gap here. I didn't multiply my words, which means like slur or fumble through my words or whatever. I just want to make sure that I am putting the track out as is, as raw and as uncut as possible, because I need you to see that this is the way I think. I did it in one take. I didn't stop it. I didn't redefine it. I didn't change it. I didn't cut it. I didn't add pieces. This is just the way it is. The only thing I add at the moment is the intro. Right? And even then, I didn't want to do that, but people were saying, no, you probably need an intro. So I was like, fine, whatever, I'll add that. So here I am, sitting on 1,000 episodes, mostly because I decided I was going to go for it. I was going to do more than average. I was going to push the envelope on what was possible. I was going to do more than what was expected of me, because everybody was happy to do just one a week or two a week or once every 2 weeks or whatever. And I wanted to do more. So if we go back to the original idea that kind of had me stumped for a minute, yeah, looking back at all those, go back in the past to alter the timeline, but you have to be very, very careful. You can't alter just anything. You have to, be very specific about where you put your fingers or whatever, right? That it would make a big enough impact on the rest of that timeline that things in the future would change. But how is it sitting in the present we don't see that any of our actions can make a difference? It's the literal difference between saying something or not saying something, which enables an addict to continue as they are, or to hit rock bottom finally, because no one else is going to catch them, hit rock bottom, and the impact of hitting the bottom actually makes them get up and pick themselves up, right? What is the impact of avoiding a conversation? It means that, once again, you're allowing someone to think that everything is okay when everything is not. What is the impact of breaking up with somebody when you've had enough, rather than trying for years upon years after the fact that it's already, overstayed its welcome? Because at that point, then you can't even save that person, and it's just too devastating for them to have to change all at once. What is the impact of preparing for a test versus waiting to the last minute to study? What is the impact of, trying to show up every day versus complaining about the fact that you don't have the opportunity and you never get the luck that everybody else seems to have, right? So if that is the case, and if we apply it further and say goals are going to be accomplished in the timeline you set for them, which means you have a choice. You can change the timeline if you want to, and I am living proof of that, right? I went from doing 1 a night to doing 6 to 10 a night because I was way behind and I decided I wanted that damn goal by the end of the year. I've proven to myself that it can be done. I've proven to myself that the quality of the content will continue if I just remain open to my kind of inspiration. Bottom line being, you don't know what's possible until you put yourself up to the challenge. You've got to put aside everybody else's expectations of you. You've got to put aside what's normal for everyone else, what's traditional for everybody else, and you got to go for you. If you see time as this space with well-defined rules, what you can and can't do with the time, depending on the time of day, depending on the time zone you're in, depending on who's around you at the time, you're going to be very restricted. But if you think about it as, you know what, I have a space where I can go escape for a moment and I can record at all hours of the night regardless of who's around me, I have cleared that space for myself, I have cleared that time for myself, then your imagination is basically the limit. So if we're so concerned about, altering timelines by going back in the past and touching too many things, we should also consider the fact that one thing could make or break the difference between a good life and a great life. It could be the difference between being discovered and continually being upset because you know you have the talent, you just don't have the opportunity. So if you get my meaning, I hope this gives you something to contemplate a little bit, because what if you showing up every day for yourself consistently on social media meant that you could actually make a business out of the content you create versus punching a clock, working for somebody else and their dreams that they have planned for themselves, right? So something to consider. You got any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. I do want to hear from you guys, but in the meantime, really ask yourself if you're doing all you possibly can for you, not according to anybody else, all you possibly can for you. Simple as that. I'll catch you guys later. Bye.